have just been to Buckingham Palace, where Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I accepted. Following the referendum, we face a time of great national change. And I know, because we're Great Britain, that we will rise to the challenge. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us. That will be the mission of the government I lead. And together, we will build a better Britain.
So, what about the German connection to this story? Theresa May and the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, they have quite a bit in common. Both are daughters of clergymen. Merkel's father took the family to minister to the faithful in communist East Germany. May's father was a Church of England vicar. Now, both are academics. Merkel earned a doctorate in quantum physics from Berlin's Academy of Sciences. Theresa May went to Oxford University. She has a degree in geography. Now, both rose to power in unexpected ways. Merkel became chancellor without any regional power base to launch her. She also happens to be the first female head of government in Germany. Theresa May has moved to number 10 Downing following the implosion of the pro-Brexit camp. Now, both women are described as quiet and pragmatic leaders who do their homework, and both are in a position to shape the future of Europe. Merkel as the most powerful European country, leader of the most powerful European country, and May as Prime Minister of a UK that needs desperately to maintain its relationship with Europe. So, Melinda, let's talk a little bit about where these similarities lead us and what we can glean from them. These women are in leadership positions, but they have different mandates almost, right? We've said that Merkel gets away with a lot of wait and see leading, and Theresa May is in a situation where she has to lead. Is that an accurate read?
Well, I think we don't know that much yet about the way that Theresa May will lead. She's coming from the Home Office. It's an entirely different role than the one that she will now assume as Prime Minister of a country in the midst of a major historic transition. Indeed, it will require strategy. It will require a vision. The degree to which she will be able to come up with those I think is still open to question. She is known, as you said, for being very pragmatic, for being unideological, and certainly we could hear that this evening when she was giving her remarks on social justice. A number of politicians in the UK were tweeting that she's taking a page from Labour's book, that Ed Miliband had made many of the same points about the direction in which England needs to go. Industrial policy, worker representatives on company boards, those are things that Conservatives normally are not in favor of. They're going to be a tough sell for her. Interestingly enough, you might also think she's taking a page from German capitalism, that a number of the things that she highlighted are, in fact, part of Germany's system of moderated capitalism, co-determination, as it's called, the role of labor in the economy. And interestingly enough, like Theresa May, Angela Merkel has been known to steal a page from the opposition's book. So on that level of pragmatism, on that level of being perhaps somebody who's open to taking ideas from wherever they may arise, there may indeed be similarities between these two women. But as I say, it's very, very early days. Angela Merkel herself has been somewhat scornful of these comparisons, and she had a very cool reaction when she heard about Theresa May's new post. She said, basically, her main job is going to be figuring out what kind of relation the UK wants to have with the EU. So she didn't exactly welcome her with open arms.
That's right. We've even got a soundbite for saying that. Why don't we take a listen to that?
The task of the new Prime Minister will be to get clarity on what kind of relationship Britain wants to build with the European Union, and in line with the decision by the British people to submit an application for Article 50 of the EU Treaty to the European Council in order to start exit negotiations.
And Barbara, beyond Brexit? I mean, what do we know about May's policies?
We know what she did as Home Secretary. We know that she was quite unideological in some instances, that she did fight for social issues within the Conservative Party, that she was one of the modernizers, really, within the Conservative Party. She said that word some years ago, that the Tories would have to stop being the nasty party. That means only dealing with and working for the upper classes and leaving the rest of the country beside. But she also has been known to be very tough, and once she digs in her heels, she was not very movable, not very flexible then. But as Melinda rightly said, we don't know anything about her in her new office. I mean, that really changes everything, and she might get to a different way of working and thinking there. At least what we saw today from her obviously points to that, because the surprise was Boris Johnson and nominating Phil Hammond as her new Chancellor of the Exchequer shows that she really knows what she wants, and it's a very clear signal.
What about the issue of migration, Melinda?
Well, if it's a question of how does she compare to Angela Merkel, there's a very strong contrast on that particular issue. Theresa May has talked very tough on immigration ever since she became Home Secretary. However, she did not really succeed in bringing migration numbers down. They were still up at 330,000 per year most recently. And in fact, the government under Cameron that she was serving in had promised to get the number way, way down from that. So far, she has found that a very, very challenging task. And of course, that is what she's going to be measured on. Brexit was all about that. Angela Merkel, on the other hand, she found her moment, her vision last year as the refugees were streaming into Germany, and she made it very clear that Germany would maintain an open door policy and would live by its values of integration and diversity. So two very different approaches there on that particular question of open borders.
And May also, as Interior Minister, had a lot of critics on both sides of this issue. Today there were critics, protesters in London talking about her past as Interior Minister. Take a listen to one protester who came out dressed as May in London today.
As the Home Secretary, Theresa May has been one of the most evil politicians since Margaret Thatcher, potentially even more evil. Difficult to say. I have to give her a time to weigh that one up. On a personal level, she's been responsible for the deportation of some of my friends and the detention of other friends who've been living here for years and years and years.
And Barbara, what about both of these leaders becoming the face of the battle of Brexit? I mean, the notion of freedom of movement, freedom of labor movement in the EU, that is something that it could slap May in the face when negotiations start.
That will be the main breaking point, and that is something that I have the feeling that for now is sort of being fudged. I mean, everybody sort of talks about we need to bring down immigration, and Theresa May has said that. She has done it, as you rightly pointed out. When she was Home Minister, the government Cameron hasn't had any success there and hasn't even really tried. I mean, that was just that was just whitewash. But on the other hand, when you talk to the European Union and you say we want to stay in the common market, but we want to close the doors for Eastern European workers, that is simply not going to work. Even though if Angela Merkel would be ready to make certain concessions to Britain, we will have to ask Poland, we will have to ask Romania, we will have to ask Hungary, and they will just shake their heads and say no. So it's not that easy, and this is really one of the most contentious points in the upcoming negotiations.
Yeah, Melinda, very briefly, yeah.
Basically, Angela Merkel's not going to make significant concessions on that point. Yeah. There are three pillars to the European Union. One is the internal market, and we're hearing all of the British leaders, Theresa May included, still saying we have got to have full access to the internal market. Well, Sorry, but that goes hand in hand with the other two pillars, and those are free movement of labour within the EU and also paying at least something into the EU budget. Every country, whether it is a full member or whether it has an association agreement like Norway, like Switzerland, must to some degree agree to that free movement and agree to pay something into the budget. So Angela Merkel said very clearly this week, after hearing that Theresa May would be a candidate, that those cannot be separated, that they remain absolutely inseparable, and that there will be no access to the internal market unless Britain does agree to some amount of free movement. So I think the negotiations promise to be very, very tough indeed.
All right. Melinda Crane, our chief political correspondent, and Barbara Vazel in London covering the story for us tonight. To both of you, thank you very much.